Hello, welcome to PODnas. We are a sports podcast with a Cajun flair. I'm gonna get through the intro this time, Jarrett. I promise. Uh, Today, we're gonna be going over the sadness that we're all feeling because there's no more basketball until fall. Pels got sweeped. I am Daniel Hawks, hosting today. Jarrett Roser again. I even tried to do this way and still got it wrong.
Yeah.
Jarrett
You
Roser
botched
right over
that.
here.
You said sweeped instead of swept. You really, honestly, instead of going for a third strike on the info, you kind of fouled it off and paused for a little bit to get through.
I ran to first and pulled my hamstring. That's basically what this was. I like made the base and then pulled up on my hammy. So, but let's get into it. Pelicans got swept. They got swept. It did look great. I was super wrong, which is I think be a theme
It's
on
going to be a
this.
theme, yeah.
Yeah. I was super duper wrong. I thought they could make it competitive, but after that first game, it wasn't. um, I'm beginning to think that the Thunder are way more legit than I gave them credit for with being how young they are. Um, I think the Pelicans have way more holes than I thought we did. uh, what are you thinking about? What were your thoughts about just this series in general and where the Pelicans go from here?
Yeah, I agree with all those points. I really liked the idea of an OKC matchup if the Pels were healthy, and I think they could have potentially beaten OKC with Zion, but obviously that wasn't the case. He wasn't available. And so I still thought they'd be more competitive. I had them in a little parlay of how series ended up and had them plus 2.5 games because I thought they could still steal two. But when you have that opportunity to steal game one and let it get away from you, and you just can't waste those opportunities, not fully healthy, lower seed, all these things. And I agree that OKC is maybe a little bit better for a young team. I think a lot of people took this attitude of, that's great, nice regular season. They're a fun
Yeah,
story or whatever, but weren't necessarily looking at them in the same category as Denver, certainly, or even a Minnesota or Dallas or potentially Clippers. And OKC, I think, probably took some issue with that and really flexed
yeah,
their muscles a bit in that first round. And now people are starting to wake up. But, um, you know, congrats to them. Ultimately, for us, we're looking now at a Pels offseason where David Griffin met with the media yesterday and said this can't be an offseason of complacency. They realized they had a good season, but not good enough. And that, to me, is kind of the biggest storyline of this week, is that sort of realization, self-awareness, and not leaning on the fact of, we had injury issues, because they had issues when they were healthy as well. And so
they
that was
did.
kind
And
of
also
music to my ears.
at a certain point, like we've had injury issues the last 3 seasons with people. So at a certain point, like, okay, if this group is going to have injury issues, we have to shake up the group. We have to
Yeah.
shake up the core. It's literally like a must.
I think when you look around the league, obviously injuries are a thing that you can never have complete control over, and they're going to happen. But some guys are more consistently injury prone than others. And so when you look around the league at top teams that can compete for championships on any level of consistency, if you have two top guys, one of them has to be a little bit more stable and reliable in terms of they're going to be there. And if something happens, again, you don't have control over that. But you've had, for the Pels, this team built around for a few years now, Zion and Bi, who have both been fairly injury prone. And so
Yeah.
when your top
I
two
mean,
guys are unreliable, that's tough.
even BI coming back, like just from that knee injury, like knee injuries aren't fun, especially when you're a basketball player. Like, and
Yeah.
I don't believe that BI was, no one is 100% at that point in the
No.
season, like for sure. But I don't think and it showed he wasn't anywhere close to the player that I, I've seen him play before, and the world and the league has seen him play it before. He wasn't even close.
Yeah. I agree with that for sure. I also, as much as I referenced they've had injury issues for both of their stars, I think it's important that we give some credit to Zion for the amount of this season that he was able to play
Yeah.
after
Yeah.
what we
Absolutely.
what we didn't see him play the last several years. And so I don't want it to sound like I'm, ragging on him and saying he's a problem and not in the lineup or whatever. Um, but
Oh,
at
yeah.
the end of the day, my biggest takeaway from this week has been the level of self-awareness from the Pels and what Griffin was saying of they need to get better, of even what BI was saying of this was not a good season on his part. And so not a lot of excuses from the Pels so much as a realization of they want to be competitive at a high level. They're not content with being kind of a playoff team that has no real chance, and they want to go out this offseason and position themselves to take that next step.
Yeah, which hopefully happens. I'd love to see it. I would love to see a good New Orleans team. We're not like a mecca of basketball down there. But I always love whenever LSU's good, whenever the Pelicans are good, whenever any Louisiana team is like making some noise. It's always, I think, a lot more fun because I
Yeah.
just truly believe that the type of fan that we bring and the type of team that we usually like put on there is just much more fun to watch than the average, like, I wouldn't say it's like New York Knicks level fanness, which
Yeah.
is absolutely insane, but it's a fun brand of basketball to watch. I think when like that Chris Paul David West team were doing so well, like even a
Yeah.
couple years ago, the series against the Suns where they took them to the brink like for a couple games, and that was just fun to watch. Truly believe that Louisiana has a fun brand of basketball to watch if we're given the chance to be put on that stage. I
Yeah.
think
I
we
mean,
I think we
oh,
saw that a lot this year. Like because the Pelicans were in prime time a lot this year. And I think people got to see when that team was clicking, and there were spurts where they were clicking, that it was great. And like I've said fun to watch 8 times, but it's fun to watch. All right.
yeah. We also, as much as has been made of Louisiana as not a big basketball state, and can there be a level of fan passion here compared to some other places? You and I are obviously two guys that grew up playing basketball more than football, and so it's a little bit different from our perspective. But at the same time, I think it's just a process, and New Orleans as a city, Louisiana as a state is a relatively young fan base in a way as like an NBA fan base. There has been a catching up process and a learning and a growing process of kind of the way the league operates and kind of expectations on the ebbs and flows of a season, and it's a long season, and then how to operate an off season and all these things. And I think you're seeing progress and sort of an overall understanding on a greater level. And also just people coming out. That we talked after that Kings play-in game. It was a really fun atmosphere to be in that night, to cheer on the Pels and get this playoff opportunity that, while it was disappointing the way it went, I think is big for the team and those young guys to be in playoff basketball and get some
Yeah.
experience with that.
Yeah, absolutely. So talked about this season. What about next season? What are your kind of wishes? Personnel changes, whether that is staff changes, player changes. Do you have any trade wishes? What do you got?
Yeah, I think I go into this offseason with a lot of anxiety from a standpoint of I was glad to hear that moves are going to be made, but at the same time, I see a lot of people referencing this guy's got to go from a trade standpoint, or we need to go make a move for this guy. And at the end of the day, there's a lot of one-sided trade wishes where any deal comes down to what the give and take is, the two sides of that equation. And so, yeah, I'd love to go get this name, but what are the Pels giving up for him? Or sure, I'd be willing to part with this guy, but what is the return for that?
Yeah.
Um, for me, I know center is a huge piece, finding the right fit alongside Z of a guy who can have some rim protection, can make some shots out to an 18-foot, if not a corner three, and open some things up for Zion and company on the drive. I want to see some upgrade from a creator standpoint, a point guard, whether a true point guard or another guy who has some creative abilities to not have some of the offense get so inefficient at key
Yeah.
moments as we saw, including down the stretch of game one. And so
I
we'll
wish we'd
see.
have given Jordan Hawkins more of a chance. I think he could be that. He was so explosive early on in offense. I understand he's a rookie and that's ups and downs, but like I firmly believe that with those defensive inefficiencies, especially sometimes in the last series, we needed offense, and the dude
Yeah.
can score.
Yeah,
Dude could just flat out score.
I love Jordan Hawkins. I was super bullish. I feel cool just saying that. I feel, just the fact that I know the term bull. Yeah,
I know.
vocab word.
I used for not earlier in a text message with us, and he's using bullish. We're on it, guys. I almost cursed again, but I didn't.
I was super bullish on the Hawkins pick this past draft and kind of cheerleading for it leading up to the draft and the pick and whatnot. I also really like Dyson Daniels, and now him being healthy. I'm interested to see how both of those guys continue to develop and what they bring overall in that backcourt. And so maybe some of the answers to what I'm frustrated with are available there in terms of a growth of some young players that are already on the roster. But I really am interested because I think I don't think you see them move Zion. I don't think you see them move Trey or Herb. And I'm glad that that's the case. And so you look at, if you're going to make some sort of notable move on the trade market, as it sounds like they will, it starts to look like picks will be involved, certainly, but an Ingram deal, potentially a CJ deal. I don't really know what the market value is for CJ at this point. And so that seems less likely to me. And so for BI, off of his self-admitted worst season, where is his value? And are you trading him at a low point in his value? And then he turns around and goes back to having a better season. And that's where some of my anxiety is of the timing of moving some of these pieces.
And one of those picks is that Lakers pick that they can push to another year. And then if LeBron doesn't come back to the Lakers this year, that Lakers pick is much more appealing.
Yeah. So I do think, look, it's May 1st. They've got some time to announce that, but I'm pretty confident they'll defer that to 2025 for a variety of reasons. But you asked about targets. Looking around, I know there's a lot of buzz of potential BI to Detroit and what that would entail. Is Ivy involved? Is a top 5 pick involved? Is Jalen Duren involved? Is Beef Stew involved? What kind of the terms of that end up being? Cleveland.
Wait, did you just call Stewart Beef Stew?
Absolutely.
That's the first time I ever heard it. I'm never not calling him that again. All right.
So that's an area I think is worth watching. I don't know if Cleveland beating Orlando in that comeback in Game 5 helps salvage what the Cavs are working on right now, or how things develop with them and Donovan. But could a Darius Garland be available? What would it take to go get an Evan Mobley, who I think you've seen some ups and downs from him early in his career, but certainly a lot to like there, particularly to pair as a big alongside of a Zion. I think I mentioned,
I don't particularly if he didn't have to live in Cleveland, that'd be nice.
Yeah. I think there's options out there. DeJounte Murray will be interesting to see if he stays in Atlanta or gets shipped somewhere, and is New Orleans a viable trade partner. I mentioned what I was starting to say. I don't remember if I mentioned it on one of these episodes or just in, off air at some point, but seeing Kobe White's big step forward for Chicago and some of the,
I don't think they're letting him go.
The pieces that, there are a lot of pieces in Chicago for a team that is still completely mediocre. And so it sounds like they're going to be poised to shake some things up too. And who becomes available? And if you throw a Brandon Ingram out there, is there a possibility that a Kobe White or an Alex Caruso or somebody you can possibly kind of glean off of that roster? But probably the craziest one I've seen or heard is on a podcast recently, someone threw out the concept of a Draymond Green for BI base of a deal, which I think would drive New Orleans fans absolutely bonkers. But it's worth at least thinking about for the chaos factor.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's half the reason why we do stuff. So, I'm excited to see what next season looks like. I'm excited for the rest of the NBA playoffs in general, but it just sucks a little bit that I don't get to wear my dope Pelicans hats with pride anymore. I have like 3 that I rotate that they all lost in, so I just couldn't wear them anymore. So I know.
Are you talking like straight like normal caps, or do you have one of those like pelican bird caps that guys are wearing? I say guys, kids, people, humans, whatever, are wearing to the Smoothie King Center. Do you need
Uh,
one?
I need one, and I will wear it for every Pelicans podcast that we do after that. So that's putting it on the record. All right. um, so I want to bring up something. I want to change gears a little bit. We're going to show a clip real quick of Angel Reese. She's a Chicagoan now, and she tried some Chicago delectables. So
Try to find new food. I already had the pizza, so the pizza's good. Harold's Chicken is busting. I ain't gonna lie to you. Like Harold's Chicken in Baltimore, we got Hip Hop Chicken. Harold's Chicken here. We have Blue Store and BR. So I'm just trying to see out which one is the best one. But I'm always gonna go to Baltimore. But the chicken here is fire.
Angel tried Harold's for the first time, and if you haven't tried Harold's, I'm here to tell you, as someone who lives in Chicago, that it slaps. It is amazing. Probably the best fried chicken I think I've ever had in my entire life. And listen, I don't want to say what she said, like, because she called Harold's bussin', and I can't pull that off. So, but it is. She's right.
Yeah, really good. I mentioned on Twitter, I had it with you at some point almost a decade ago, a time or two, and it's been a really long time. And so hopefully I get up there sooner than later and get to reindulge. I also noticed she didn't seem super hype on the Chicago pizza, and
Well, it's weird. Like, I feel
that's
like
potentially a hot take up there. But I agree with her full assessment of not super sold on deep dish, but very sold on Harold's.
so next time you come up here, we got to get you Chicago Tavern style, which I think is better than deep dish. And that's like a growing sentiment up here. Not growing sentiment. I think it's been an underlying sentiment up here that is now like coming a little bit to the forefront. But we're not a Chicago podcast. We're a Louisiana podcast.
So also with that in mind, shout out, as Angel did, Blue Store Chicken in Baton Rouge, which is fantastic as an option down here. Also in Baton Rouge, Empire Wings. And look, there's a lot of really good wing options in the area. And honestly, I'm not gonna like take a shot at New Orleans wing options, but a buddy Josh Preston and I always talk about how great some of the options in Baton Rouge are compared to New Orleans when you consider the size of those cities. And we actually do have some pretty good wing spots in Baton Rouge, all things considered.
Okay. Well, hey, there's some, if you're in Chicago, if you're in Baton Rouge, we got you covered. All right. You're going to eat good if you ever come hang out with Daniel or Jared. So, that is all we got for you for PODnas. We're going to have an Instagram soon, I promise. If not, keep catching us on this YouTube. Please like, subscribe, follow, sub, all that kind of stuff. That's all we got. PODnas out.